Hello, I'm Richard Murphy, and I want to talk about an aspect of modern monetary theory that somebody has asked me to comment on my blog, and that is what would happen with regard to taxation in the event that it was necessary, as MMT says might be the case, to increase taxes to control inflation if the time came when there was full employment in an economy and a government still wanted to redirect resources towards government activity, or it wished to simply stop that inflationary trend. Well, what the person was worried about was that this would mean that to control inflation, the tax must be on consumption. And, quite rightly, the person was concerned that that means that the tax in question would have to be on the consumption of those people who have most to spend as a proportion of their income, which of course is those on lower pay, and that taxes on those with higher pay and on wealth, which are generally considered to be fairer taxes, would not be effective in controlling inflation in that situation, and therefore MMT would effectively prescribe a social injustice in that situation. Well, first of all, let me deal with what the alternative is, and that is, of course, to increase interest rates and make clear that actually that also delivers a social injustice in the situation that we're talking about, because, of course, those on lower incomes and wealth are those who will be borrowing, because the wealthy, by definition, don't borrow because they've already got the resources that they need, and those on highest income also, in proportion to their income, borrow less, because again, they have the resources that they require to make settlement. So let's be clear that the control of inflation does always look prima facie as though it hits those on lower incomes hardest by trying to reduce the level of consumption. But then let's think about the fact that tax is not in an MMT system at all and only about collecting revenue. Far from it, in fact. Tax has a multiple range of purposes inside an MMT system. So whilst it is entirely true that if a government that has managed to increase activity in its economy to the point where full employment has been reached, which frankly is a point which we should all be celebrating, and still wants to spend more on socially necessary programs, has to, as a result, increase tax to prevent inflation and to make available the resources by reducing spending on consumption to allow their reallocation to government activity without long-term inflation impact. That still does not preclude the taxation of people with wealth. It will require additional taxes on those on lower incomes, and I don't dispute that. But remember, at that point, everybody on lower incomes will be able to work at a fair rate of pay, and have choice about how they want to work. So by definition, they will be much better off than most people are at the present point of time. But the reason why I say that the whole tax burden would not have to fall on people who are at the lower end of the income scale is, first of all, let's be clear, although as a proportion of tax paid, those on lower income pay a higher proportion of their income on consumption taxes like VAT, in absolute amounts, those with wealth do actually pay, of course, more VAT than those on lower incomes. And therefore there are options available about how we are going to reduce spending on consumption in the economy. We could have differential VAT rates. Now, that is possible, particularly now the UK is outside Europe, but it of course would be possible inside Europe as well for those who are watching inside the European Union, because it could be decided that it would be entirely desirable to have differential rates of VAT on high-value, non-essential consumption items. And this has happened in the past inside the EU, where, for example, the UK had a higher rate of VAT at one point, and it was charged on items like jewellery and yachts and as non-essential consumption items. So that would be possible. Secondly, you can have alternative consumption taxes. You don't just have to have VAT on those items where, again, you could see there being problems. So there could be higher taxes on alcohol, higher taxes on carbon, higher taxes on cars. Now, I know that some of those will, again, give rise to problems with regard to those on lower pay. But there's nothing to also, and at the same time, stop you increasing the taxes on those with wealth and higher incomes and using that to redistribute to those who have lower incomes. In other words, whilst you're actually trying to cut consumption overall, you can use a redistribution mechanism to guarantee that those who would be most vulnerable as a consequence of that reduced consumption will not be put at risk as a result. And if you wish to retain a balance within the tax system and use the tax system, because remember we're at full employment now, to achieve this result, then you can tax those with wealth simply because they've got wealth and because you want to use that opportunity to rebalance society in favour of those who have less wealth and income, and that is a completely valid reason for taxing in its own right. Now, this is not a description of the politics of envy. This is the description of the politics that require the redistribution of income and wealth to make sure that there remains sufficient demand on the part of those with low incomes to guarantee that they can have a sufficient standard of living to enjoy well-being that everybody else has access to. My point is that a simple answer, presuming, for example, that VAT is the only solution to tax at this point where inflation is at risk, is not the right thing to do. We have lots of taxes precisely because that gives us a range of tools to manage this situation. So VAT might rise in that situation. Other consumption taxes might rise in that situation, but so too should taxes on high pay and wealth, by which I mean capital gains taxes, inheritance taxes, taxes on corporations and so on, to redistribute, to rebalance the economy to make sure those on lower incomes are fairly treated. In this way, we could deliver the MMT goal without harming those on low incomes, and that is critical. It just requires a bit more thought, a bit more management, and a bit more integration within the tax system than we've been used to date. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in what I've been saying in this video, please subscribe. There is a button below the viewing screen. If you're interested in what I have to say on Twitter, I'm at Richard J. Murphy on that medium. If you want to look at my blog, that's taxresearch.org.uk, and we have a Facebook page as well, Richard J. Murphy. So one of those things will get you more information on what this video series is about, and I hope I'll see you again soon.